What's good, internet? Jake here, dumb as ever, and G.I. Joe is one of my guiltiest pleasures, mostly because it's super hard to recommend a franchise that is essentially American military propaganda, even though the most recent iterations have tried to stray away from that identity. But hold on, before we get into the weeds, what even is G.I. Joe? Well, it's the franchise that produced the first action figure. The original G.I. Joes were 12-inch dolls of generic soldiers from different branches of the US military. First being launched in the 60s, these dolls were marked as action figures to appeal to annoying little boys. G.I. Joe eventually fell out of favor in the wake of the Vietnam War, and was relaunched in 1982 as G.I. Joe Real American Hero. With this line, the toys went the opposite direction, now at only 3 3/4 inches tall. This was to match and compete with the wildly successful Star Wars toys by Kenner. G.I. Joe Real American Hero was backed by a cartoon and comic book, and introduced the iconic characters that fans know today, like Duke and Cobra Commander. In a lot of ways, Real American Hero walked so Transformers, which was released only 2 years later, could run. And past the military propaganda aspect, the best way to describe G.I. Joe is Transformers but humans. There's 2 different factions fighting, all of the characters have code names, all of the toys have file cards explaining the character, and they both had cartoons to advertise their toy lines. Obviously the Joes aren't robots and can't turn into cars, which is lame, but the franchise has so many elements that I like from Transformers, and with both of these franchises being owned by Hasbro, they constantly cross over in media, like the current Skybound comic book universe. This brings us to G.I. Joe The Rise of Cobra, the 2009 film that brought G.I. Joe into live action for the first time. And arguably, this film only existed because of the success of the 2007 Transformers movie, which I believe at some point was supposed to have included G.I. Joe, but that was later changed. Though I will say Lennox from Transformers would have been so good as Duke. Channing Tatum is fine in Rise of Cobra, but I just believe Josh Duhamel was more believable as a reliable soldier. Rise of Cobra ironically feels so much less like US military propaganda than Transformers does. In the movie, G.I. Joe is actually a global operation, and towards the end of the movie they even disregard orders from several nations including the US. Plus there's so much sci-fi stuff going on it hardly feels like real war. That's what I like about the movie. The action really does feel like making your action figures fight, and some of the fights even reminded me a bit of tokusatsu, with a lot of fun practical effects and cool costumes. I can't help but crack a smile thinking about Storm Shadow flying away on a jetpack, or Duke and Ripcord jumping around Paris in exosuits, or Cobra's base being underwater beneath the polar ice caps. Like, this is Saturday morning cartoon stuff and they really leaned into it. One of my major issues with the movie is that because it's the rise of Cobra, several iconic Cobra characters are not present, or only show up in the last 5 minutes. The most obvious example being Cobra Commander, who is technically in a lot of the movie as the mysterious doctor. The doctor is played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and I gotta say he delivers a great performance. He hams it up the most, and his hamminess actually works really well in this movie. I love his creepy villain voice, though they actually ruin it by pitching his voice down when he becomes Cobra Commander.
The time has come for the Cobra to rise up and reveal himself.
You will call me Commander.
It sounds way too try-hard now. It would have been funny if his voice got pitched up instead.
The time has come for the Cobra to rise up and reveal himself.
You will call me Commander.
Snake Eyes was given lips for some reason, drawing obvious comparisons with the Power Rangers. As a Super Sentai fan, I'll be brave and say I don't mind the lips on helmets, though Snake Eyes' lips are a little bit distracting. Storm Shadow is my favorite Cobra villain and I love him in the movie. Just a D1 hater as he should be. I think his costume looked really cool as well. James McCullen aka Destro is the movie's main villain, though he doesn't do much and gets hoodwinked by Cobra Commander, who injects him with nanites that randomly make his face metal. He looks like a Dan Hinchell character with those effects. I'd say the biggest mistake of this movie was tying Baroness, Duke, and Cobra Commander together. Cobra Commander's whole thing is being mysterious, and this movie just reveals exactly who he is and where he came from. What makes it even worse is having him be the brother of Baroness, who is married to Duke. The movie also makes a dumb decision of having Baroness be brainwashed by Cobra Commander, so she's not even really a villain. It's the Rise of Cobra, but one of the main Cobra villains is not actually a villain. Makes sense. There's a lot about the movie I like, but I can definitely see why it was critically panned. Though, in my opinion, it did capture the fun spirit of the franchise. We're going to talk about the G.I. Joe Rise of Cobra toy line now. But if you're enjoying the video, please consider liking and subscribing. It'll help me defeat Cobra Commander's most villainous recruit, Al G. Rhythm. And you know what they say, liking and subscribing is half the battle. The G.I. Joe Rise of Cobra toy line was huge for me as a kid. It introduced me to the franchise, and I have a deep nostalgia for this line. So much so that I've been collecting figures mint on card for a few months, but for this video I'm gonna go ahead and open everything I have for footage. Much like G.I. Joe Real American Hero, the Rise of Cobra toys are 3 3/4 inch scale, with a heavy emphasis on vehicles in the line. The packaging has always jumped out to me as well, with bespoke character portraits for every figure, and a dynamic look to the packaging shape. I'm not going to be able to cover every single figure in this video, so if I miss one you had a close attachment to, let me know in the comments. Many characters had multiple figures, so I'm going to talk about the main Joes first. Breaker only got one figure. To be honest, I didn't even remember Breaker from the movie at all, and I never had his toy. The toy is kind of lame as well because it doesn't include his little eye helmet piece, which was his main look throughout the whole movie. Scarlet and Heavy Duty both got 2 figures. I never had a Scarlet figure, and I'm noticing the face sculpts can be pretty rough for these smaller figures sometimes. I did have Heavy Duty in his camo gear, another underutilized character in the movie. He and Breaker kind of fall to the wayside unfortunately. Ripcord, played by Marlon Wayans of all people, got 3 figures. I had the accelerator suit Ripcord and he was great fun. That scene really sparked my imagination as a kid. I do feel like his standard figure looks a bit awkward and his costume is kind of boring. Snake Eyes got 4 figures, though only the first Snake Eyes had molded lips. The rest of them, including the Paris Pursuit Snake Eyes, which I have, just have regular lipless masks. Hasbro, you cowards. It's funny that they call this his Paris Pursuit look because this is not what he looked like in Paris at all. But he does come with his wolf Timber, which is fun. All of the characters come with stands, which I really like because these smaller figures are prone to fall over. I also like the Arctic Assault Snake Eyes. He looks so bundled up and cozy. Duke also got 4 figures. I also had the accelerator suit version of him, and again, it was super fun to play with. But my main Duke was always the Desert Ambush version, which is basically his look from the beginning of the movie. Some of the side G.I. Joes like Hawk, CoverGirl, and Sergeant Stone also got toys. By the way, it was so random seeing Brendan Fraser show up, but the director of G.I. Joe also directed the Mummy movies, so it kinda makes sense. On Cobra's side, we had 2 figures of the Baroness. I had her standard figure as a kid, but there was also the Paris Pursuit version that had her in a cool trench coat. Zartan was weirdly one of my favorite figures as a kid, despite how low-key it is. I just love Zartan's knives and brutal nature, despite his mundane appearance. They also gave him face markings similar to the original Zartan, which is interesting because he didn't have those markings in the movie. Destro only got 1 retail figure, and to be honest, this figure is mid. He looks fine, but we never actually see Destro look like this in the movie, and annoyingly his feet don't peg into his stand, which is an issue I remember having on my original copy, kind of like a deja vu feeling. Storm Shadow got the most figures out of Cobra. I love his main figure. Again, the costume just looks awesome, though his hip skirts hinder his leg movement a ton. His Paris Pursuit figure features a maskless version of his head. This toy is cool, but in the Paris Pursuit scene he actually wears a bespoke white suit, and for this version it looks like he's wearing a biker jacket. His Arctic Threat costume features a blocky pattern all over his body. This is a reference to Storm Shadow's second costume in the original toy line. And finally, Arctic Assault Storm Shadow features the character Bloodied from his final battle with Snake Eyes in the movie. The Doctor had 1 figure, but there were 2 versions, one with a white lab coat and one with black, which is kind of bizarre considering he only wears black in the movie. Also, the box hilariously spoils who he is in the movie, which is entirely unnecessary. Even Destro doesn't have his real name on the box. The Doctor figure is cool. His hairpiece even comes off like in the movie, though it comes off way too easily, often moving or falling off after barely touching the toy. The Doctor is weirdly wearing bondage gear under his coat. Bro is freaky, and he also has these claw weapons, which look cool but barely stay on his hand. Cobra Commander is my favorite toy from this line. It's a childhood bias for sure, but man, I love the plexiglass face look, and the metal chest with badass coat really works for me. I love the classic Cobra Commander blue on the inside inside of the coat. Though this guy was pretty disappointing in the movie, he was the main villain of every story I made up as a kid playing with my toys. We also had some cool exclusives. There was a mail order version of Cobra Commander that gave him a chromed out face and chest, and they also gave him a crimson look, which I love. They re-released this guy in the Pursuit of Cobra line, which is where I got my copy from. There was also the SDCC exclusive Destro set, which featured the James McCullen from the intro, and the modern day James McCullen pre-Destroing. Both of them come with metal masks though. And this set is your only real way to get a movie accurate Destro. It's a really cool set and is definitely a holy grail piece for me. I love the way the packaging opens like a book to reveal history about the McCullen family tree. In addition to the main characters, there were tons of side characters added to fill out the line, like Kamakura, the apprentice of Snake Eyes, or Charbroiled, the flamethrower specialist. On Cobra side, there were tons of Vipers released. Vipers are the soldiers of Cobra. The ones we see in the movie the most are Neo Vipers, but the toy line ran with the concept and introduced many other versions, like the Elite Viper, who looks like Snake Eyes' long-lost cousin. Nano Viper is the weirdest to me. He's bright green and comes with this weird thing you can trap him in. I kinda like how strange it is though. While the action figures were a major part of this line, the vehicles were just as important. The best part of smaller action figures is being able to give them vehicles, and a lot of these I really wanted as a kid. But I only ever had two vehicles. One was a small tank called the Armored Panther, which came with a dude named Sergeant Thunderblast, kind of a fire name. Even though it's kind of plain looking, I really enjoyed this tank as a kid and kept it for a long time. My other vehicle was the Steel Crusher APV, which came with a Nitro Viper driver. The Steel Crusher is the Hummer from the Paris chase in the movie. This was a beloved toy for me. I played with it so much as a kid. It was big and chunky, fun to roll around with big rubber wheels, and it has a giant cow catcher on the front for the express purpose of hitting stuff. Truly the stuff of children's dreams. I love that you could open the doors and put the figures in the seats, though sadly there were no back seats due to a missile launcher gimmick. Much like the action figures, there's a lot of vehicles, so I'm only going to highlight a few for each team. On the Joe's side was the Rhino, which might have been my most wanted vehicle. The Rhino is this big burly tank of a vehicle, and the coolest part is that the main section actually lifts up to reveal an attack helicopter, so it's kind of like a 2-in-1 vehicle. The helicopter reveal feature is actually really fun. I love the slow raise it does. The Ice Dagger is another one I saw a lot. I really like the rounded look of it, and the fact that it's a 2-seater vehicle. Plus the cannon weapon in the back is really cool because the figure can pilot it. The Dragonhawk XH1 is a fairly standard attack helicopter, but something about it just screams classic G.I. Joe to me. And finally, the Pit Mobile Headquarters was the big playset of the line. A massive vehicle that could open up into G.I. Joe's base of operations, the Pit. I love the gigantic unwieldy vehicle the playset folds up into, and there are plenty of pegs and features to decorate it with figures. The way the vehicle expands into the playset is really cool. I love how tall it gets. There's so many little touches and features in this set, but my favorite is the ping pong table with the special anti-Cobra paddles. On Cobra side, we got really wacky sci-fi vehicles, like the Mole Pod, which is a toy I always wanted, and I was happy to find it at my local toy store. It comes with a Terra Viper, who looks completely different on the back of the box. The Mole Pod is a cute little vehicle. I like that its drill actually spins when you roll it, though it has a launching missile instead of a pointed tip. I don't know why it's so satisfying to put a guy in a thing and then close the door, but it really is. There was also the Cobra gunship, which showed up a lot in the movie, though this one is definitely smaller than the movie version. The same can be said about the Mantis attack craft, which is way smaller and looks a lot different than the movie version. But I actually like the toy version way more. It's chubby, cute, and I like the red accents. The Crimson Hydra is a super badass looking stealth bomber. It is a little bit squished, but I love the red. The plane has a secret escape pod, but you have to manually pull it out. It would have been cooler if it was spring loaded or something. The final vehicle we're going to talk about is the Night Raven, both a flagship toy in the line and an important part of the actual movie. The way the cockpit works is really cool, and they gave the jet a handle, so not only can you swoosh the toy around, but also turn the plane into a blaster that shoots missiles. You can even cock the Night Raven to shoot more, which is really funny. The vehicles are so cool, and they are such an important part of G.I. Joe to me. While I think Rise of Cobra was a really fun movie, it was panned by critics and fans alike. It was too goofy for critics and too different for fans. I hated Retaliation, which tried to make a more serious version of G.I. Joe. And I also disliked Snake Eyes, which was a pointless origin movie. It just felt like they were going through the motions, and giving him his iconic armor at the end of the movie was dumb. And also, he talked the entire movie. It's like the opposite of what Snake Eyes is supposed to do. It's the most non-Snake Eyes movie. Those movies did have toys, so let me know if you want me to talk about them as well. Alright y'all, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing. And if you'd like to support me further, I also have YouTube memberships and a Patreon. For $1 a month, both give you the same thing. Access to my private Discord community where we host monthly movie nights and weekly Toku nights, as well as my member-exclusive Toy Dives series of videos, where I take a look at weird and wacky toy lines, like the Mystic Knights of Tir Na Nog, a weird medieval version of Power Rangers that I had never heard of. I also have a merch store now, so if you want a dumbjake hoodie for winter, now would be the time to grab one. Alright y'all, I'll see you in the next one, ciao.